I'm Luke Batt, and you're about to watch the Kiwi F.O.R.T podcast at Digital Nations. With me today, I have Carl De Visser. He's the producer and game designer at Grinding Gear Games. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, so I'm a producer there, so Chris Wilson is the lead producer, and he's one of the founders of the company.
Brilliant. And they're overseas doing some media, getting that into the eyes of the public as well, aren't they?
Yeah, they're just about to head off to the US. They're doing a little sort of press tour there for about a week about what's coming up in the game.
Well, that'll be interesting. Can't wait to find out that sort of information. But while we've got you here, I've got some questions to enlighten our listeners and viewers about what Grinding Gear Games is working on at the moment. So you're working on a game called Path of Exile.
Yes.
What is that?
Okay, so in 2006, which is a while ago now, Chris Wilson and Jonathan Rogers and Eric Olofsson, who are the founders of the company, decided to make an action RPG. They played action RPGs, which are sort of very combat item-oriented role-playing games, and they thought, well, we could make one of our own, and they had some skills. It took them a bit to get started because they hadn't made a game before, which is a fair challenge if you haven't made a game before. I'm fairly late to the company. I've only been there 2 years, but yeah, so they decided to make one, and Path of Exile is that game. And
cool. So if people don't quite know what that genre of game is, so that's very much like Diablo or Torchlight or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's that kind of game.
But
so you play a single person and you've got a top-down view, and there's lots of monsters around, and you kill large quantities of them.
But from what I've seen and played, it's very different from that sort of thing. You've taken your own spin on it and whatnot. I've found. We'll get to that a little bit shortly. But there is a passive skill tree. It's enormous. It allows for an insane number of customizations. What are some of the unexpected builds from beta players that you've seen or that stick out most in your mind?
So we know in the game we want to make it possible for people to do some pretty interesting stuff, and try and make characters that even verge on sort of broken and a bit scary for us. So there's plenty of things in the tree that allow you to change your character and can be combined in interesting ways. So we've got ones, for example, that reduce you to 1 hit point, but give you a sort of a large energy shield that protects you, which is sort of quite different to the sort of normal health thing. And people have found all sorts of ways to use that to have very long-lasting characters.
Just very, very insane combinations. What is it that you feel makes Path of Exile so unique among its peers in the genre?
So, in some ways we're very true to the roots of the style of game, but there are a few spins that the founders decided they want to put on it. So we've got the skills in the skill gems, which is sort of like each skill you get is an item that you equip on your character, and then you can put supports on that change how you use that skill. So a lot of creativity from the players comes from how they can sort of combine these gems. And then we've got no gold in the game, which surprises a few people. So we've got currency which changes your items. So it's sort of like a gambling system or a crafting system where you use these items to change your items, and players use them to trade as well.
Oh, there you go. You mentioned the items, like the weapons, the items, and what's not. Do they have natural abilities, or is that based solely on the gems?
So they've got their own stats that do things, and we've got unique items which sometimes do some sort of crazy things and do things all by themselves, like they can sort of poison monsters and have special effects and stuff like that.
Do those gems, do they add to or do they nullify the natural stats of the items?
So they basically add to them. So the items in the passive tree all support you using your gems. So the gems let you sort of click the buttons to do the special power, and the items enhance your character and make it do it better.
Cool. So out of the 6 playable classes, what's the one that you've had the most fun to play?
Well, a lot of what I do is game balance. I'm not really meant to play favourites, but so and I quite like them all at different times. So
cool.
But certainly in games normally I tend to veer to the magic users.
And you've got two different types of magic users. Is that correct?
So in practice, any of the classes can use magic just by using the skill gems.
Yep.
But the ones that are best at it, there's the witch, who's sort of the pure intelligence character and is very good using spells, and there's the Templar, who's sort of more of a fighter magician, and then there's the Shadow, who's sort of like an assassin magician. That being said, there are sort of spells that you can use as a marauder, which is the sort of the pure fighter. They like use totems, which have sort of effects on the battlefield, and there's the ranger that can sort of mix a bit of magic, and even the duelist, which is sort of the pure fighter.
And so it really depends on how you use that passive skill tree.
Yeah, so what sort of stats you get and what sort of gems.
Oh, very cool. Okay, so what are some of the ways that the story is being approached in Path of Exile? Being that there is so much replayability, the environments themselves can change. You can find map items and things like that, and it changes to suit you and your party. So yeah, how is the story approached?
So Eric Olofsson, one of the founders, is very much behind the world and how it fits together. He sometimes calls himself the Omnitech, because as well as being the sort of the lead artist and in charge of getting all the art stuff done, he's very passionate about the lore of the world and how it fits together.
Yep.
And because you play through the game a lot, the lore is sort of something you find in the game. So there are bits that happen as you do the sort of the main quest bit, but there's a lot of stuff that's just discoverable. So items have like flavor text on them sometimes, and they just sort of give you a little snippet of the world. And you find items like, so on the coast in the areas you're first in, we've got these Karui stones, and the sort of Karui are people that have come to Rayclast, and it sort of tells these sort of stories about Kalm, who's one of the sort of ancients of this world. And
the system that Grinding Gears Games has opted to go with for microtransactions, it's a really interesting one. None of the purchases help a player level. It's more about customizing the gaming experience with things like custom alternate skills and item effects, pets, additional animations, and for a premium price they can get customized content and whatnot. How do you feel this has worked as a source of income as opposed to some of the pay to win or pay to unlock quicker leveling systems that other games have used?
Okay, so the founders, very much game players themselves, they were determined it wouldn't be pay to win, but they had seen free to play games work in Asian games. It wasn't really a Western thing then, but they'd seen like MapleStory in Korea, so they thought at the time we'll be the first Western free to play game. It took them a while to get Path of Exile out there, so they've since sort of taken over Western games as well, the sort of free to play idea. So to do that without pay to win, it basically relies on sort of cosmetic effects that make your character look better in the game. And a lot of the game is about sort of showing off and showing your mastery. So if you don't have a way to make yourself better playing the game, you can show off what they look like.
So when if I was to buy something, everyone else can see what I've got?
Yeah, yep. So even though we're not an MMO, we're sort of instance, we do have towns which have a large number of people in them, and you get to see what other people have. I mean, people have responded to that well, but we've also had a lot of response in, well, I'm glad you guys aren't pay to win, and I want to support you, and people do support us in a reasonably sizable way, so we're very pleased with that.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. So the item system in Path of Exile is quite in depth. Can you explain how you or the guys at Grinding Gear Games have come to craft such a unique trading economy?
So the items are very important to the game, and they're very important in action RPGs. And Chris, Jonathan and Eric, when they played action RPGs, they identified that very early as the items are very important. So there's been a lot of focus on making them important and making them a big part of the game. We certainly allow players to trade, so we don't bind any items to the player, and so a lot of it is spending the effort to get the items you want on your character and making your character interesting. And the item's always very impactful. It's sort of a goal that when you get an item that's a good item, it makes a difference straight away when you put it on.
That's great. How have you found the players responding to the trading system during the beta?
Well, so initially in the closed beta, we didn't have the trading system implemented yet, and you had to sort of walk out of town and drop your items on the ground and sort of then walk at 10 paces basically and pick them up. And trading was all very much a big thing there, but the community was moderately small, so there wasn't...
They tried to be honest and whatnot.
The people were pretty honest, but it was pretty clear we needed a good trading system. So we've got a trading system, and we probably need to do a lot more on that to sort of improve trading. But it works and people trade very, very actively in the game.
Can you explain the leagues and events that occur in the game Path of Exile?
So as well as you can go in and you play the main game and your character sort of lasts forever. We have leagues, which can be very short. We have one leagues which last 12 minutes, right up to ones that last sort of 4 months. This is like a self-contained version of the game, where players go in and they start with a fresh character. The shorter ones you generally don't trade in, and it's basically a race. In fact, we call it a sort of a race season, and people do lots of these races and earn points. And then the longer ones are just people like to have a fresh economy in the game. They like to start a new character and compete a bit, and sort of have a experience that's separate from where all the items that have existed forever sort of exist.
What are some of the more challenging things that you've come across while designing or assisting with Path of Exile?
So we work a lot to make sure players have options to make powerful characters, but we don't want sort of one character type or one thing sort of become dominant. So it's sort of always a bit of a giving the players tools to do awesome, cool stuff we didn't expect, and then trying to make sure that the stuff we didn't expect isn't too out there, but sort of out there enough to be interesting.
It's always interesting when someone creates something that's just so overpowered that they just wander through things that they shouldn't be able to.
Yeah, which is also fantastic.
Oh yeah,
you can see the joy in it.
Gives someone else something to strive for.
That's right.
That's great. Currently, Path of Exile is a PC-only title. With the support that both Microsoft and Sony are providing for independent developers, do you think there will come a time when Path of Exile makes it to one or both of those next-gen systems?
So I don't have anything to do with that side of the decision-making. So I know that the founders of the company certainly like to keep an eye on what's there. So I don't know, but I'm sure that if it's possible, they'll consider.
Being that it's a PC game, do you think it'll be coming to Steam?
That's again not something I can talk about. I can't talk about the future.
Fair enough. If you had to convince someone to try out Path of Exile, how would you sell it to them?
How would I sell it to them?
How would you sell it to them?
Well, I'd first ask, do you play sort of computer role-playing games? And if they do, I think it's sort of easy. Just try it and see. Load it up and see what you think. And if they don't play RPGs, it's kind of the same story. It's sort of load up and see how you go. But you probably want to give them a few tips of where to click. But at its core, the game is, the very, very basics of the game are straightforward. You hit the monsters and they fall down and they drop treasure.
And cool stuff happens on the screen.
That's right. So the core of the game should be enough that someone sits down and they sort of start to click around and work out what's happening.
Brilliant. There's one final question. Is there any fear that beta players who are playing so much are going to get bored or get their fill before the game is actually finished?
So we do have players that sort of play the game and they play it for a long time. And often, if someone plays it for many, many, many hours, they go away and they play another game, and often we find they come back. And we've got the new leagues. When we start a new league, we often have a sort of flood of returning players and they try out the new leagues. We have game players too, so we certainly understand, there's other games out there, I want to try them, and that sort of thing. So far we've been very lucky. People have sort of settled on the game. A lot of them play it as their game of choice. And if the player plays for a while and they decide they want to go do something else and not come back, that's all good too. So
brilliant. So it's available, it's in beta at the moment,
that's
free.
Right. So
everyone can get in, right?
So if you go to pathofexile.com, you go there, sign up, hit the download now button, and you've got the game and you can play.
Completely easy to jump in and unlimited access.
Access to all the content.
And you can buy stuff and change the way that your character looks basically straight away.
Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much for talking with us today.
I'm Luke Batt from the Kiwi F.O.R.T podcast, and that was us at Digital Nations. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.
Yeah!